Now, I'm here to have an interview with the Vice Minister of Trade of Indonesia and also the head of delegate of the ASEAN Economic Minister meeting, Bapak Jerry Sambuaga. And I would be asking several questions regarding the meeting and the potential that we would have for ASEAN and also Indonesia. The first question would be there was several talks already for days regarding for months actually regarding Indonesia's plan and intention to join BRICS. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. I think one of the most interesting things that we are uh, facing right now is about how we promote international trade, how we promote economic growth, how we promote, geopolitics of all the stakeholders, including all nations in this world, right? And then, as we know, that Indonesia now is member of ASEAN. As a matter of fact, we are chairing the ASEAN chairmanship this year. Last year, we were the president of G20. We were hosting the G20 summit, and then we also part of APEC. So actually, Indonesia is very active, I would say, in terms of playing a vital role in the international arena. Yeah, particularly on trade and on politics, and also on other various aspects. And many have asked about the possibility of joining BRICS. Yeah, as you know, BRICS consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And we also note that all the nations that have been mentioned, particularly in BRICS, we have very good relations with them. Yeah, starting from Brazil, Russia, yeah, India, China, and South Africa. All of them, yeah, we have, let's say, we have built a very significant relationship, and then bilaterally and also regionally, because some of the nations that have been mentioned in the BRICS, they also participate in other forum, for example, in APEC, even in ASEAN, and other international organization that Indonesia is part of. So I guess in terms of awareness, yeah, and in terms of the interests, yeah, of these BRICS countries, yeah, and Indonesia, I think we have of course common intentions, yeah, common obligations, yeah, as part of the stakeholders of the international community. Of course, all of us, yeah, including Indonesia, must be facing, yeah, a lot of challenges, yeah, particularly after pandemic COVID-19, yeah, and therefore I think the spirit of collaboration, the spirit of cooperation, yeah, must be enhanced. And as you know, according to the data that we receive, the potentials of BRICS is very significant. The numbers of the GDP, I think it has exceeded more than 335 trillion rupiah, right? As we know that this number is quite significant, is also essential. And we can understand and we can also note that by, let's say, participating in international organization, it can also increase, yeah, our bargaining power, our leverage as well. As we know that Indonesia is right now is considered as one of the most, let's say, top destination, yeah, for other nations. Yeah, why I said that? Because I remember during the G20 meeting, when I was accompanying Bapak Presiden Joko Widodo and all the ministers, all the nations, all the countries, they appreciated how Indonesia, you know, has dealt with pandemic COVID-19. And as a matter of fact, the truth of the matter is that we successfully, yeah, cope with the pandemic COVID-19. And also, especially in this very good event, I would like also to affirm that at the time, Indonesia has successfully maintained a balance between health sector and trade sector. And we achieved our trade surplus, and it is actually giving us a very positive message. And those countries in G20 meeting, they appreciated Indonesia. And also in APEC, when I also accompanying President Joko Widodo in a summit, all the APEC countries, I think they also, gave two thumbs up to Indonesia. So I think it's normal. It's fair to say that other nations, maybe other uh, regional organizations other than APEC, other than G20, other than ASEAN, perhaps BRICS, would have some interest in having Indonesia to become one of the members. I think it's normal to say. It makes sense, and I think it's also proper to say that with regards to having more cooperation on the regional level, I think one of the most important thing is to have a reciprocal, a reciprocal relationship. Reciprocality principle is very significant in maintaining, our roles and our strategic positions in the international world. But again, the government of Indonesia, I think, will assess this, right? And also will coordinate with all the technical ministry, particularly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, just to make sure, and of course, to be sure that our involvement and our position, as well as our plan, as well as other interests such as BRICS countries' interest to have Indonesia or probably Indonesia to join BRICS, I think can be discussed, can be discussed and can be reviewed, and also can be, not only discussed and reviewed, but I think probably perhaps maybe a special consideration, can be discussed along with other technical ministries, particularly from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
So that was really nice. So it doesn't really matter if Indonesia is a part of one regional power. It doesn't mean that Indonesia cannot enhance the cooperation with other regional.
I don't think it's a problem because I think it's very clear that the principles of our foreign policy is politik bebas aktif, Politik bebas aktif is literally means free and active, right? So, according to our principles and our constitution, is that Indonesia's foreign policy must be independent, and also at the same time active in preserving our roles in the international relations arena. So, if we actually are based on that, so we actually have opportunities, a lot of opportunities, right? And we have a lot of potentials at the same time by being independent, being free, but at the same time also being active. It literally means that Indonesia is very attractive for everyone, for anyone, for every nation, for every country, not only countries, but also regional or international organizations. As we can see that I already mentioned to you that previous opportunities and previous events, all the G20 countries, they appreciate Indonesia. Also in the APEC, when I attended the APEC summit in Bangkok with President Joko Widodo, they were also happy. They really welcome Indonesia, and to me, it's no surprise if BRICS countries sees Indonesia. They see Indonesia as one of the potential emerging nations that, right now, our inflation rate is quite stable, below 4%, to be exact, 3.17%. And our economic growth, has reached almost 5%. As a matter of fact, previous time, 5% something. And then our trade balance, has achieved surplus, with an amount of almost close to 20 billion US dollar, in June 2023. So with all the assets, of course, not to mention also the volume, the size of our market with the fourth largest population, in the world, after China, India, and the United States. And not to mention also our system, the democratic system that we have. I think will be the third largest after India and the United States by population. So with all the things that we have, I think it's normal if other organizations have strong interest in having Indonesia, or maybe in expecting Indonesia to be part of their organizations. The spirit of cooperation must be enhanced. And as you know, according to the data that we receive, the potentials of BRICS is very significant. I think it's very clear that the principles of our foreign policy is politik bebas aktif, yeah, strong interest in having Indonesia, or maybe in expecting Indonesia to be part of their organizations.
So the next question would be, one of the highlight of the ASEAN Economic Minister meeting is the ASEAN DEVA or DEFA. So can you elaborate the potential of the potentially achieving total of $1 trillion digital economy pact?
Yeah, this is something that's quite interesting. I got the data that have been informed by our officials that the AM meeting in those three outcomes. I have to mention this. First is the study of DEFA, this leader statement of to develop ASEAN DEFA, and then the framework of negotiating DEFA itself. So I know that this is very interesting. Why? Because ASEAN, the population of ASEAN is approximately almost 700 million people. 700 million, almost 700, is about 680 million individuals, right? And Indonesia's population, as you know, is 280 million, right? So you can see that almost half of ASEAN population, I think, dominated by Indonesian, because of our numbers is quite high. And it's also reflecting, the leverage and also the capacity and the capability of Indonesian people. Why? As you know, and digitalization has a lot to do with our livelihood, right? Starting from a very simple one. Let's say you want to do transaction. Right now, nowadays, in Indonesia, mostly in areas of Indonesia, particularly maybe in cities of Indonesia, you can just now use your gadget, right? You just use your electronic equipments without paying cash, right? It's something that is very simple, that start off as one of the efforts of digitalization by the government, also by the society, also by the people. And to be exact, for example, a very good example, a very concrete example, in our office in the Ministry of Trade, we are trying to digitalize traditional market. Our target is 1,000 traditional market per year. So now, if you go to the traditional market, to the pasar tradisional, to the pasar becek even, now you can use your gadget. Yeah, you can scan, these shops, and then you can pay using CRIS QR code, customer's QR code, the quick response code Indonesian standard. We also coordinated and cooperate with Bank of Indonesia. And less than 3 seconds, payment is done. Something that has a lot to do with the development of digitalization. That's only payment. Yeah, we have a lot of things to do, like marketplace, access to market, access to digital markets, and so on. And now you can see, I think he has been announced, quite recently, that if people from Thailand go to Indonesia, if people from Indonesia go to Thailand, they can use the CRIS also, your QR code. So you go to Bangkok, people from Bangkok go to Jakarta or to Semarang or to wherever, they can just use the CRIS, scan the merchants, and then it will automatically convert, to the local currency. It's a very good sign. It's a very good progress, and it's a very good message that countries like in ASEAN countries, for example, like Indonesia and Thailand now are pursuing digitalization cooperation, and it's not only good for practicality matter, but also it can enhance the value of the local currency. You don't have to go to the money changer to exchange, your own currency to some certain currency and then again convert to their local currency. But you can just use your gadget, and in less than 2 seconds, maybe even a second, you get your amount correctly. And now we are also cooperating. We're moving on to Malaysia and Singapore. So Bangkok, Thailand's done, Malaysia next, and Singapore. So it's just actually one concrete example of how digitalization is something that we must pursue. And the fact of the matter is that in ASEAN, it becomes priority to create a digital ecosystem. Now, that is very important. As we know, as I mentioned to you previously, that digitalization is something that we cannot avoid. We must welcome digitalization and put it on a very comprehensive, a very solid framework collectively. So that's why within ASEAN, I think it's a very perfect opportunity for all of us, including Indonesia and other nations in ASEAN, so that we can work together and we can proceed to the next level in order to pursue digitalization matter. As you know, digitalization is something that we cannot avoid, and digitalization has a lot to do with our livelihood. In our office in the Ministry of Trade, we are trying to digitalize traditional market. Our target is 1,000 traditional market per year, and it's not only good for practicality matter, but also, yeah, it can enhance the value of the local currency.
That is really great. And then ahead of the summit next month in September, what kind of a breakthrough that we can expect that will be present in the summit?
Sure, I think we can wait, right? We're looking forward to it. Now we are hosting the ASEAN Ministerial Economic Minister meeting, and then in September we'll have the summit, yeah, the high level, where the President of Indonesia, Pak Joko Widodo, and other head of state and maybe head of government will also be present there in Jakarta, and a lot of things to be discussed, a lot of things maybe to decide, a lot of things also to follow up. Yeah, of course, starting from the very primary sector one, starting from the ASEAN resilience through the establishment of ASEAN epicenter of growth based on the theme, and also you know that we are also focusing on the health architecture and also the health sector, starting to have enhancement of the capacity and the funding for prevention, and also the anticipation or preparedness for the health response, so that maybe in the future we don't have, if we have something like pandemic, something like COVID, we can be able to respond to it, to anticipate, and of course to find a solution for it, particularly on the health sector. And of course, not to mention also the energy issue, which is going to be very, very crucial one, because as we know that we are facing climate change, and I think all nations and all countries now agree to have a better way of dealing with climate change issues by being pro-environmental, or taking a very pro-environmental position, right? Starting a very simple one, like Indonesia now is promoting electric vehicles, in order to reduce the emission, and in order to create a better and a good quality of our air and so on. As you know that we are relocating our capital city to IKN next year, and as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, that next in the IKN, in the new capital city, it will be all be very pro-environmental, starting from the surroundings and starting from the use of electric vehicles. Even if you want to be near to the capital city, the new capital city, you must preserve and committed to the enhancement of the electric vehicles use, right? And I think it's very important, and it's very concrete way of us doing a very simple thing in order to be committed to the ASEAN priorities, which is to have a clean energy and something that is pro environmental. And of course, the food security is also important, that in order to have, let's say, a necessity, or probably or perhaps the assurance of how ASEAN members of ASEAN countries, ASEAN nations must work together. Must work together in order to have again the possibility and the capacity, so that we can anticipate, right? We can also support, yeah, how each of us, all of us, are committed to maintaining, and of course to work together, because food security is an issue for all of us. Food security is a challenge for all of us. The population of any nation, I suggest and I believe and I'm quite convinced that we will have, numbers of population exceeding, right? And I'm sure that it will have uh, impacts, yeah, on our livelihood, on our policy, and starting from the very simple one, on our distribution and supply chain. So I think this must be resolved collectively, and this must be discussed thoroughly. And we are now very keen on formulating this kind of policy. And I also believe that as ASEAN members, all of the ASEAN countries, as I witnessed myself during the meetings, this is the fourth day in our ASEAN Economic Minister meeting. And we all agree, we all know, and we are welcoming, actually, we are welcoming the possibility, the collectivity of how we as nation, we as part of ASEAN, work together to resolve the food security issue.
Thank you so much, Mr. J. That would conclude my interview with Mr. Jerry Sambuaga as the head of delegate of the ASEAN Economic Minister meeting and also the Vice Minister of Trade of Indonesia. And really, far as I'm concerned, ASEAN, under the chairmanship of Indonesia, bringing the theme epicentrum of growth, is really going in the very right direction.